Hi everybody, Petri here. Thanks so much for coming by and painting with me. We're going to have a great time. We're going to have a lot of fun painting this painting. This is the glazing technique we're going to showcase here on this video. We're going to start off the video and kind of go over a lot of details on the drawing, the layout of the painting, and the actual glazing technique, and some of the really fun things you can do to make your painting a little more transparent and using more lighter washes and adding more water to your paintings. Again, lots of experimentation we do on my channel, so you'll notice that, and if it's your first time here, welcome. Great to have you aboard. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because we're getting together every week after week, month after month, and year after year. So you'll have a great time learning watercolor, learning all about watercolor, learning how to paint, draw, all the different subject matter we do. We do everything, landscapes, seascapes, city scenes. We do still life paintings, flowers, beach scenes, oceans, a little bit of portrait painting sometimes we'll work into the mix. Okay, so we do everything here on my channel, watercolor. You'll learn a little bit of everything, a smattering of everything, and you'll have a great time of it. We have fun. And again, this painting especially, we're going to have the glazing technique here on showcase. We're going to show you how to create this wonderful painting. It's a beautiful landscape with some water, like a lake or an ocean, bit of ocean water coming into the scene here at the bottom of the painting. Lots of light washes, tons of water. We're going to show you all the interesting and cool effects that we can get with watercolor and with the lots of water into our work and our artwork. Okay, so we'll be right back and we'll get started with the video. All right, so we just saw the finished painting. We're going to kind of get ourselves a little bit of a head start by starting the painting first. So I've actually started this painting, and it's got a few bits of work done to it. We have some drawing, pencil drawing done, and then a preliminary light wash, our first glazing. So we're using the glazing technique, of course. And what I wanted to do is maybe just spend a little bit of time explaining how I've gotten to this place in my painting without having to go through each of the steps. So maybe we can kind of condense it a little bit, and maybe it makes a little more sense to do it this way occasionally, let's say. Sometimes it's better to see the whole process, like from start to finish. But right now I think it's a good time to try to take a step back and maybe have some of the painting already completed, and this way we can kind of go through some of the steps more thoroughly as we're looking at this in this state right now of having one very, very light wash of watercolor over the top of the paper once we have our pencil drawing done. So the first thing that we did do when we were starting, we completed some hash marks on the paper. So what I did was carefully, I used a T-square ruler. So these are really great to have. You can actually rest them on the edges of your paper like this, and that'll give you a perfectly straight line if you rest it on the top edge of your paper. So I can see, and actually when I put my tape on my paper, I press down so that when I press my tape down, it leaves a crease on the edge of the paper so that I could rest my T-square right on the edge of the paper, and it will hold there and be tight to the edge of the paper. And this way I can get that perfectly straight plumb vertical line, or if we do it on the side of the paper, we can get a perfectly straight and level horizontal line going across the paper this way. So this T-square can be really handy, especially if you want to get your horizon lines really straight going across. You could also measure. That works too. You just measure equal distances. Like let's say this was 2 inches. You make a mark at the bottom of your paper 2 inches here, and then you come over here and make another mark at 2 inches, and then you just bring your ruler. You might, like here, I need a longer ruler, so I'd have to find my metal ruler, which is around, but you kind of get the idea. You would just want to have one long straight ruler all the way across. You wouldn't want to break up the line with a ruler like this. You'd rather have a longer straight ruler that's going to go all the way across your paper from tape to tape around, where your border is of your painting, where your tape is set. So that's one thing we did. And we did the quarters. So we did 1 quarter up. So if we're talking like recipes, quarter cup, half cup, 3/4 of a cup, full cup. So we could think of it that way. 1/4 of the way up, we kind of, around that area is where we put our horizon line of the, where the ground level meets the mountains in the sky area. Then from there, pretty much everything else is sky from 1/4 up. So from 1/4 to 2/4, or half to 3/4 to full, that's all sky up here. So you have 3/4 sky, 1/4 lake, sand, lake, water, mountains, and trees in your first quarter of your section of your painting, going across this way horizontally. So that's kind of one thing we kind of talked about design-wise when we were working on this. And then the next thing we were kind of thinking was, let's make sure that we, sometimes when I'm drawing here on the video, I'd like to draw what I call a preliminary sketch. So basically we talk about the preliminary sketch and the final contour drawing. So the preliminary sketch would be when you take a super light pencil line and you kind of, let's say if this is our painting here, like this, and we're doing a preliminary sketch, it would kind of be like barely visible, like you can't even see it when I'm doing it right now because it's so light and the video doesn't pick it up, or it might pick it up just a little bit. But that would be your preliminary sketch, where you kind of, you get all of your subject matter, you know, loosely and you know, carefully but loosely onto your paper, onto your sheet of paper. And then from there you can go over with a darker line, which would be your contour drawing, or also, like, you could call that your finished drawing or your final drawing, where everything, you would just go over the, light preliminary sketch lines that you already created, and like redraw it a second time and just go, those light sketch lines that you put on first, those are like your guides, so you kind of have everything already there, and then you go over with your darker pencil lines, but you don't necessarily have to do your darker pencil lines. I like to do the darker pencil lines over the lighter pencil lines, but that's something, you're the artist, you'll figure out if you want to have darker pencil lines and showing through your artwork when you're doing your watercolor paintings, or you might decide you just want to do a light preliminary sketch, accurate, but you know, not too dark of a pencil line, and then you can just paint over that or paint to that as you're going through your watercolor painting. So that's up to you. I like the darker pencil lines, so I did do a preliminary sketch and then I did a darker pencil line over the top of that lighter sketch, which is my final contour drawing. So that's how we got to this point here. And also too, we did our first wash, which was very simple. I just, you know, I can kind of explain in a brief fashion here. I used the 1-inch Princeton Art and Brush Company has a 1-inch wash brush, which is a flat brush, really good. And I use this a lot in my beginners series videos, the extreme beginners series videos. And all you have to do is type in Chris Petri Extreme Beginners, and you'll see all my videos, which, if you're just starting out here, welcome. Thank you for coming by, and it's great to work with you. So if you're just here for the first time and you haven't painted before, you can work with this video as well as you can work with the Extreme Beginners videos too. Those are really helpful to look at. There's a whole bunch of them. I have probably 100 or more of those videos, and then you can also just follow along on the regular videos as well, because if you're just starting out, you can watch all the videos and work with the ones you really enjoy the most or you think you'd like to work on. But let's say, well, let's get back to what we were talking about with our first glazing for this. So the first wash, or the first glazing, we're doing the glazing technique, which means we're going over with a glazing on our painting, letting it dry. Usually it takes about a half an hour, 45 minutes to maybe an hour to dry. You could also use a blow dryer and blow dry off your paper once you're done painting your first glazing, and then once it's dry, you'll notice that it flattens back out and it's not buckled as much anymore. That's kind of when it's, you know, it's pretty much dry or close to dry, but it's got to be dry to the touch. And then you go back in and we'll go over the second glazing on top of that, lighter first glazing like we have here. So the first glazing is basically the fun one, and it's quick. And what we do, the first thing we do is we take our paper and we wet it with any size flat brush you have, or even a round brush. Any kind of brush works if you're going to wet your paper. The thing is, you'd want to have a large brush if you have a larger sheet of paper. So you wouldn't want to take like a brush, like let's say, we wouldn't want to try to use a brush this size to try to wet our paper like this. We'd want to use a larger brush like this because it'll help us cover quickly, get our paper covered quickly, because we don't want to wait too long once we wet our paper like this and get our paper surface wet with fresh clean water. So I'm using fresh clean water. If I look at my water bucket and I notice there's any murky looking water from previous days of painting or anything like that, I dump it out, make sure I clean the water bucket out, and then I pour new fresh clean water in there so that this is crystal clear water. I put that on to the paper like so, and then that's the fun part, as well as putting on a little bit of color. So we're going to use some cobalt blue, French ultramarine blue here, and a little bit of cerulean blue over here. So we have these 3 blue paints that we can use that really look great. I usually go a little bit darker at the top, and that's all we did here is we just took that color and put it onto the paper like that, all the way the whole entire painting. Then what we did is we also I rinse off my brush, use a paper towel or a tissue, and I dry off my brush a little bit, and I went in and got some, that's raw sienna. Raw sienna goes along the bottom right here next to where the ground level is. Just a little bit of that, and that's fine. You just want a little bit of that warmth along close to the ground level. The sky is usually very cool, and then as you get closer to the earth, it's a little bit warmer, so you'll see a little bit of that atmosphere, that warm kind of glow at the bottom where the sky meets the earth's crust, so to speak. And then we have that little bit of that orange mixed in there, and that's it. Once you do that, you're set. That's your first glazing, your first coat of watercolor, and that's exactly where we are here. So that's all I did this same process onto this little bit larger sheet of paper. And I wanted to mention too, this paper is actually Arch's satin paper, which is like a very, very smooth paper. So once in a while I like to use the Arch's satin paper. It's got the pink cover on it, you can't miss it. And incidentally, all my art supplies I always have down below in the description box below. And I usually buy all of my art supplies, 90% of my art supplies on Amazon. They have everything pretty much that I ever could need for my art supplies. And it's real simple. I just order it online, look at the prices, check it out, find the best price of the same product, let's say. And then I just order it, and I don't have to drive around and waste gas and mileage on my car and worry about traffic and wasted time. I could be, go out for just to get 1 tube of paint, and it could take 2 hours, and I'm stuck in traffic. And so I avoid all of that. I just order Amazon. It's so convenient. It's great for the atmosphere too of our planet, actually, because less pollution, less people going out in their cars driving all around. Amazon just takes one truck and they make all the stops at the houses and deliver everything, and that's only one truck driving around instead of 500 cars or trucks or whatever we have as a vehicle, pickup truck or cars or whatever. Anyway, so we're just going to keep going on here with our second glazing now. But what I'll do is I'll take a quick break first, and I'm hoping that you like this kind of preview before we start our painting, where I kind of have things started a little bit, and you can see there's nothing really too fancy here. We're just doing like a beautiful, a little bit of a lake or some ocean water here in the foreground and the bottom. And you did see the finished painting when we first started the video, so you had an idea of what that looks like. And then some mountains in the background, and then some hills in the foreground, a little bit here, and some bushes and trees and things. And maybe we'll add another tree over here or something too as well to kind of balance it. It looks like I have most of my trees over here, so maybe I'll put maybe 1 or 2 over here too, just to have that little bit of a balance to it. That's a good design idea of kind of keeping balance in your paintings, so that it doesn't feel like there's too much on one side of the painting and not anything on the other. Just an idea, concept. Theoretically, that's how we kind of think of it, as balancing things, like adding balance to the painting is a good thing, theoretically. All right, so, all right, with any luck, we're going to have a really good painting turning out here, okay? I'm sure you're doing a great job so far of absorbing this information, and then what you'll be doing is basically getting your painting started, your drawing, and again, I just did that simple. I'll go over it one more time just real quick so you can get your pencil drawing done on your paper, and that was just, going up 1/4 of the way, and that's your horizon line with your where your land meets your mountains and trees, and then the rest is going to be sky. And I think I did measure it. I think I used metric on this painting in particular because it tended to work out just right. So I used the metric centimeters, and when I came over here, yeah, it worked out 6 centimeters, 12 centimeters, 18 centimeters, and then 24 centimeters, and that was the full height of the paper. 24 centimeters, and we broke it into 4 divisions, quarters: 6, 12, 18, 24, and that gave us our quarters like that. And that's pretty much how we did it. And then again, just I started, I think, over here. I'm a right-handed artist, so I start usually on my left side and work this way so that my hand's not smudging the pencil lines. So if I started over here drawing, does that make sense? If I start my drawing over here like this, and then I'm coming over here, and then I put my hand up over here, the next thing you know, I'm kind of smudging my pencil lines over here. So if you're right-handed, always best to, it's not a hard and fast rule every time. Like, give yourself flexibility when you're drawing. But at this point when I'm kind of just making the idea of, if you're right-handed, pretty much you're going to want to work from the left side of your painting when you're drawing. So your drawing's going to be, if you can start to the left and then work to your right, and then if you're left-handed, you'd start over here and you'd work this way. And if you had trees over here, whatever it is, and you just kind of work your way this way. And this way you're not, again, you're not resting your hand on the pencil lines you're drawing so much and smudging them as much, This tends not to smudge too much. Pencils, with like I have an 8B pencil here, and then I use a regular school pencil or office pencil. I use that a lot too. That's my HB number 2 pencil. And these pencils don't smudge too much really when you put them down onto watercolor paper. But, if you want to, it's a good habit to get into anyway, of just working from your left to right if you're righty, and if you're a lefty, you're going to work from your right to your left, like that. All right, so we'll come back and we'll start painting, and we're going to have a fun time doing our second glazing, and we're going to kind of, I'd like to really make this a really fun painting with lots of water. So I might go over this a second time with a lot of water. I think that's what I'm going to do here, so that we make it a really wet, damp surface to work on with our watercolor, because that's a great way to exploit watercolor, is to use lots of water if you can, and kind of play around with it a little bit, make it, part of your, maybe practice once in a while to maybe, do some, practice runs and add some different techniques to your methods when you're painting. So that's what I'm going to do here, is we're going to kind of add, usually we would just normally first glazing like this, let it dry 100%, and then come back and do our darker washes over the top, and we normally wouldn't put water on top of the paper anymore. Just that first wash would be it, and then we would paint whatever other areas we're going to paint. But now we're going to actually try to make it even more damp, our surface, and see what kind of looks we can get with that. So we'll try that out right when we get back in a second. All right, so we are back, and let's, again, just one more time. At this point, you should be, if you're painting along with me, sometimes, well, I know myself, I used to always watch videos like on YouTube when I was first starting out painting. I would always watch the video one time through first, then I would go back and then work along with it, and then stop and pause and, hit the pause button and work along with the artist that I was following at the time. And as well as I had DVDs that I was doing the same thing with. So pausing the DVDs when I was watching artists, and kind of, so I'd paint up to what they were going to do, catch up, and then and then hit go or play again, and then follow along with what they were doing, and then kind of go through it that way. But everyone's different, so you do it the way you like to. So again, but we have this now. It's a dry paper, dry to the touch, and perfectly dry. Paper's flat too, because once it's dry, it'll go back to pretty much its flat state, where it's pretty much like a drum skin, really tight and flat. And then what we'll do is, we have our pencil drawing already on there. That was first, and then again, that first glazing, we kind of showed you how we did that with just a scrap piece of paper here to kind of go over that. And many of you are probably familiar with the glazing technique. So now what we'll do is we're going to do the same thing we did to start with, which is we're going to go over this with fresh, clean water and just get another coat of fresh, clean water, crystal clear water, to dampen our paper. And we don't want to take too much time, and we don't want to put too much on. Just dampen the paper, and that's it. We don't want to flood the paper with too much water. Just a good, quick damp once over, like that. And kind of move rapidly, and that's why I'm using this larger brush. So if you can use a larger brush, you could even, if you have, you could use a wide brush like this if you have. We could use that too. So sometimes I'll have a wider brush, and I'll just do that, and I can really cover this quick within 30 seconds. So you use whatever brush you have, widest brush you have, and you can use a round brush or a filbert brush, or whatever you have is fine. But once I have that, that's it. I get that first light coat, and now I'm going to grab one of my round brushes. So I'm going to use, this is my Da Vinci Maestro number 8 round brush. And what I'll do is I'll mix some more paint. So we already had mixed our blues, which is good. But now I think we're going to start to go into our raw umber. We'll get some raw umber here. More raw sienna might be good. A little bit of blue, cerulean blue in there, just in the middle to kind of gray up a little bit there. To gray up our gold color. So we don't have everything just all that golden color. We want to kind of mix it up, maybe make a little bit of a variety of those golds, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually have a fun time now, and I'll take a tissue just to mention this now when we're going to go over with this next bit of painting and washes. We'll be careful not to put too much water on there, so we'll just dab our brush on a tissue before we go in, and we'll test it out. Yeah, see, now that looks good. So I'm going to just take some of that mixture we made, and we'll get some of the trees in there, like this. Just the light ones, and we're going to make some over here too. Now what happened was I didn't actually do any pencil lines over here, but that's okay. We'll just go over the top with some of the tree, the branches and the leaves of the tree over here. We're going to do a couple over here. So I'll just put the the leaves and things on there like that, and I'll put some pencil lines in once this dries, just so it kind of matches up. But I did want to add some of those. Add some of these trees up here, like that. Okay, and that's just a simple circular motion with just that little bit of light golden raw umber with a little bit of raw sienna and a tiny bit of the cerulean blue, and that's about it. And I leave little white bits of paper, so I don't want to make it all filled in solid, these trees. I want to leave them, the leaves of the trees and the foliage, I want to leave it like, with some light in there and some areas you can kind of see through. I did it over here. You can even sometimes blot up a little bit if you took maybe too much, or if you added too much paint. You can sometimes lighten it up a little bit with just a dab of a tissue here and there. And that's really nice. That's kind of our lighter wash now that we have, that we're starting to build up some really nice light washes on here. And then I'm thinking we can actually Let's try some pencil lines in here. So I'll try to put some pencil lines over here. Okay, that works fine. So you'll see, I'm just going to put some pencil lines in here where these trees are. Like that. Some branches. Like that. And then we'll actually work in some finer branches and things with a needlepoint brush soon. So we'll work that next once that dries. So we need this to dry before we're going to put any details into the foliage. So if you can imagine, we're going to put in where we see these pencil lines, where we're making our branches and our tree trunks and things. We're going to put some darker lines in there, some darker paint. But what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry first, though. We don't want to go in and try to paint fine branches on wet, damp paper. That's one thing we can definitely say, is that with watercolor, a lot of times knowing when to go in and do additional washes is really important. If we wanted to add more color to these, to this foliage, yes, we could go in right now and add a little bit of, it works nice. It's kind of like blends in nice if we added, let's say we wanted to add a little bit of, what else can we add to this? Maybe a touch of green. So we could go in and add a touch of green, right? Right now that's fine to do it. The only thing is, I just wanted to mention that if you wanted to go in and do some branches with a fine needlepoint brush like this, and we'll make some French ultramarine blue and burnt umber for our branches, with a little bit of that raw sienna and raw umber in there too. A little bit of more blue, yeah, like something like that. Right? Now if we went in and tried to do that here, it probably does work at this point because it is starting to dry a little bit, but you can get a little more finer lines if see how it doesn't really, you can't get really good fine lines if your paper is still damp like this. So that's why we're going to let this dry. But while we can keep working right now though, because we have the mountains we can work on. While this is starting to dry, there's no reason why we can't get a little bit of purple. And we'll start to work in a little bit of that purple for the distant mountains. And what I'll do is we'll get some purple in there. Maybe a little bit of raw sienna just to gray it down a little bit. And then we can do that. We could start to get in that purple mountains in the background. Doesn't that look good? And that's fine. We can put that in now. That'll blend in fine with everything. So you'll do this with not a lot of difficulty. It's just a matter of this beautiful purple. We can go right over that. So we're going to paint in some trees here too, and you can just go right over everything with the purple at this level here, at this point, because the next colors we're going to actually go over with darker colors. So you could even go over the foreground too, or so there's mountains in the foreground here, and then there's mountains in the background. You can, with no problem, you can do all of these mountains. The four mountains in the foreground and the background in the purple. And then once that purple dries, then we'll go over and put in our darker washes for our foreground mountains, which are here. And you won't notice that there's some purple in there. But it'll kind of mix good, I think, with the next color going over the top. And that's really it. I think we can take a break at this point so we can let this start to dry a little bit for ourselves. Yeah, I think it's a good time now. We'll let this dry, and then we'll come back. And again, you can use a blow dryer for 10 minutes or so, and you'll get this all dry 100%. or you can let it dry naturally if you want to. That's fine too. You can take a break, do an errand or two, maybe you have some chores, maybe you have to do something, or you have to go online and search something out, or do something online that you have to do, take care of. So yeah, we can always budget our time accordingly, so that if you want to let it dry naturally, which kind of will, it'll have a better finished quality to it if you let things dry naturally, because then the paint soaks down into the paper more. If you use a blow dryer and dry it off topically, then what happens is it actually doesn't let the paper, the paint soak down into the fibers of the paper as much, which I think will make it less transparent. So that's one thing to kind of have as something in the back of your mind, to keep in the back of your mind. If you can, if you have the time and you want to budget your time and kind of time things, better to let this dry naturally. But if you want to blow dry the paper, that's fine too, especially if you're just working on this as like a composition for like a practice run or two, and then if you're going to do your finished painting, then you'd want to sort of probably try to let it dry naturally if you can. But it's up to you. You can do it both ways and see how it looks. Maybe it's not going to be a big difference, when it's finished, the painting, using the blow dryer or not. I think it does make a little bit of a difference. I've seen it in my own work, but you have to try it out for yourself, because maybe that little bit of difference might not, be so important to you. I'm not sure. Everyone's different. But okay, we'll come back in a second or two, and we'll keep working, okay? But I think we're getting there. We're actually about halfway completed with the painting portion now. We're just going to get some more foreground paint in here for the darker darks. We'll get some details, more details on the trees a little bit, and then we'll do our foreground paint, which is going to be some green and brown shoreline and some green grass, and more of the, we're going to leave this blue color for the lake or the ocean water that's in the foreground of this picture, and we're all set. We'll have everything good to go. Maybe we'll put in some figures too, maybe a boat and a couple figures. We'll see as we go. All right, so things are kind of setting up and drying. We can still work though. We have the foreground to work on, so let's do that. I'm going to have a little bit of green here, so we'll use that sap green again. I'll mix in a little bit of the raw umber with the sap green. Maybe a little bit of cerulean blue too over here. Again, this will give us a little bit of some variation in color. So a little bit of sap green to start with, and then a little bit of cerulean blue over here, a little bit of raw umber and burnt umber over here. So you kind of have a mixture of colors across the palette here. So you kind of mix what your ideas are as far as your colors. You want to have some exciting mixtures of colors. We wouldn't want to just take sap green and then start painting in that sap green kind of, without kind of modulating the colors a little bit. Let's think of it as we have the opportunity to, we have our palette space here. We have the opportunity to take some paints and mix out some interesting colors that we know are going to work together. So we know sap green, that's going to be beautiful for the grass areas where we have some grass and vegetation. And then we know we've already used the siennas and the burnt umbers for the trees, and we mixed in a little bit of green too there, so that's fine. And then even for some shadowing too, we'll use some purple and some French ultramarine blue. So we're going to have some of that also working for us. A little bit of that dark color mixture up there. Again, that's ultramarine violet for our purple, French ultramarine blue with a little bit of burnt umber to get us a nice dark. So we have some darks up here, and the purple there, the ultramarine violet by Winsor Newton, and we have ourselves some really good mixtures. And then I'll take, again, always I have a tissue in hand to dry off my brush here and there a little bit, and also blot up a little bit of spots of paint or something. If my paint brush drips some paint or something, I can quick, just if I have a tissue in hand, blot up quick. So let's rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water, and then we'll start going in and get some of that green grass here and there, which is kind of nice to have some of that green, kind of that nice vegetation feel. It's summertime or right around summer. Might be fall or springtime, we don't know, but it sure looks good when we have some of that greenery happening. And you can spin your brush around sometimes and do some fancy stuff like that once in a while. You got to practice that first. That's why I always say it's always good. I have my book, Methods for Success in Watercolor. I have a lot of brushwork exercises. I was hoping you would pick up the book and really work on the exercises that are in the book for brush techniques and painting. And there's all tons of beautiful paintings. Over 65 of my paintings, my best paintings that I've ever painted, are in that book. And you can even see down below here in the description box, I have a 2-minute video where you'll see every single page of my book and all of the paintings in there and the exercises and everything. I cover each page really quickly so you can kind of just see it, flipping through the book, what each of the pages look like and all the paintings in there. And it's enough that you can see what it looks like. I just wanted to make it a quick video though, so it's only 2 minutes, but you'll see all of the pages and everything in the book down below. And I hope you'll pick up the book because it's really fantastic, a great price, and tons of my paintings. You have years and years of fun by just painting my paintings that are in there, copying them, working with them, painting them. I have all the colors that I'm using and all of the descriptions in the book, so you'll know all the colors I'm using and how I painted it, the steps that I used to get to the finished painting. So I hope you'll get my book. It's really fantastic. And I have I'm working on another book too. It's going to be all coastal and like shore scenes, coastal beaches, boats, lighthouses. It's going to be a really beautiful book, all coastal. So everyone really enjoys that. Most everyone really enjoys that a lot. So I know that's why I'm doing a book just on that alone, that subject matter alone. Okay, so I'll put a couple splashes in on the trees a little bit on the foreground here just to give the painting a little bit of variety as we're going, and texture. And then I'm going to do the same thing, a little more sap green. And this is closer to this grass area, so it's going to be more vibrant, the color. So I'm going to make that sap green a little more vibrant. I'm still going to add some raw umber to it. And then I just get the paint on there. Good mixtures. You can also go with some raw umber there. Maybe pick up a little bit of the purple and some of the darker dark and get a little bit of a darker dark in there too, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. Okay. So things are coming along really nicely. And again, like we said, we're going to be making some water in here. So that'll be interesting. We'll do that soon. Actually, the water is already completed. Once we painted that first glazing over the whole painting, that created the water in the foreground. So we don't have to do much to the water actually in the foreground here. It's going to be, we'll put some sand here with that raw umber and raw sienna. So we have some sand, some water, a little more sand over here coming in this way. Kind of nice to have some movement in the painting, so you have some long stretches of land, and then you have some other maybe bits of sand coming in here from this side of the painting, sort of. Kind of leading the eye through. I'll make it a little bit darker, pick up a little more paint. And what I'm trying to do is make these light washes though, transparent. I'm trying to go with a really light bit of painting here, right? Really kind of delicate light washes. I'm not going with really super thick paint at this point. I'm really keeping it kind of light and airy and transparent. Again, we're using a little more than water than we usually do. If you follow my channel, and many of you do, thank you so much for following along and painting with me. I have so much fun joining along with you every week as we paint. And sometimes I like to do things a little bit differently so everyone can have like some more things to think about. Maybe I know maybe many of you actually paint with more water than I do, and you might create your paintings with more water. Actually, I've seen some of your paintings where people I know you do paint with more water. Some of you that are out there that some of the artists that have sent me, actually quite a few of my friends here on YouTube have sent me their paintings, and they look incredible. And so I'm grateful that people send me their paintings. And so I do know some of you are painting with like a little more water than maybe I do, which it does look really good. That's why I like to try it out once in a while and just keep asking myself the question, do I need to start adding more water to my watercolor paintings as I'm progressing as an artist? I'm not sure. I'll try it out and see what it looks like. And all right, so now I think we could start fusing in some ultramarine violet and this darker bit of French ultramarine blue and burnt umber, just to get some shadow maybe for these trees. Since this is damp, since this paper is damp, that's a good time to add in some shadowing. Like this, underneath the trees. That kind of looks good. You can make it darker, the shadowing, which is more French ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt umber in there, a little more ultramarine violet, purple. Rinse off the brush, dry off the water off the brush on a paper towel or a tissue, and adjust it a little more purple in there. Yeah, that looks good. So we're getting some of those trees, the shadowing of the trees below, like this. And then if some of your shadows come out too large, you can always grab a paper towel or a tissue. Sometimes paper towels are great. I take a paper towel and I just kind of remove a small piece like that. And then I fold it up like this and press it down. And then I can go in and kind of lift up a little bit if I have to. If some of the paint starts to like blossom out and flood out a little bit onto your paper, not a problem. You just grab that paper towel, fold it up and lift it up a little bit. Press it down hard and it really comes up like it's not even, we didn't even put it on there like that. But so you can see that does work if you got to lift up some paint. Because sometimes I do overdo it sometimes with my water and paint ratios, but that's fine. And you can always come back when it dries and then add a little more darks there. But if it starts to blossom out again, you can always do that. Lift up a little bit. Okay. Well, hopefully we are going to have a good final result. I think we will. We have some time now. Let's let this dry. Let's let this dry now, and 100%. And then we'll come back and we'll finish up by just adding some of the tree limbs and trunks of the trees. We're going to add in that little bit of darker foreground where the mountains are here in the foreground. So we're going to add that into as well. And I think once we do that, we're going to be really all set. Everything will be 100% complete. All right, we'll be right back and we'll finish up. All right, we're going to finish up. Now, usually I do clean my palette 2 or 3 times or more during a painting, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to, we aren't using a lot of colors, as you can imagine. We've kind of used a limited palette here, really. We haven't used, a tremendous amount of colors. I think we've kept it to maybe 6 or 7 colors altogether. So I'll just do a quick even though we're using a limited palette and we're not using a lot of colors, it's still good to kind of clean the palette, because we do tend to, I guess, homogenize all those colors so much that they tend to lose their identity, the colors themselves, and become maybe too much of a gray mix where we don't see some of the colors we want to have popping on the painting. So now's that time to do it, and I'll empty my water bucket, my water container, and I use the rubberized one for the videos especially, because In the past, I used to use the plastic containers, and it would make a lot of noise. I think some of you were kind of not happy with that, so I realized it was making too much of a noise tapping on the plastic water buckets, but these rubber ones are great. They're very quiet, so to speak, on video. If you're deciding to make some videos yourself on YouTube or something like that eventually, or this would be a great thing to use on, so that if you're tapping on your water bucket, you can kind of hear it's not too noisy. Versus if we were using our plastic water containers, and I'm trying to see if I have one. Well, the plastic ones are make a lot of noise. That could be, that could, bother quite a few people with the noises. So, okay, we're going to continue with our same brush, I think, here. And actually, we'll go with a smaller brush. Let me use this number 5 Da Vinci travel brush, which is synthetic, and this comes with the Schmincke palette. So if you buy this palette, it comes with this brush, and this is a great brush, and it's again a travel brush, so you can work with your brush outdoors. Let's say if you're painting outdoors, rinse it off with clean water when you're done. You put it into the tube like this. You close it. It has an air hole in the top of it so that it'll air dry it without a problem, and you can put this into your pocket, your shirt pocket, a duffel bag, a purse, whatever you have, a go bag. And it's a great brush to have. You can just leave it in your, you can even have like a little set of gear that you put in like a duffel bag or a backpack of a couple brushes like this, and maybe a small paint set, and you just leave it in there all the time. And then whenever you go out and you think you can do a quick little painting at lunchtime at work, or outside maybe, or if you're going to visit relatives on the weekends or something, or you're going on some kind of a getaway or something like that for a week or something, or a vacation, you can bring it with you. So what I'll do is I wanted to paint these, so I'm going to use burnt umber and French ultramarine blue and a little bit of cerulean blue and a little bit of raw umber too. And I'll just kind of work these out and get myself a good dark color like this. And then I'll start over here. Excuse me, I'm going to have to get a drink of water in a second, I think. I'll get the main trunks of the trees here with this brush, and then we'll come in and get some smaller, finer branches. And I just take a little bit of paint at a time, not too much. And the same thing over here. A little bit of shadowing too. And I try to make the trunks of the trees, thicker at the base, and then as they go up, they get a little thinner. And then some of these, like branches at the bottom of the tree trunk, they're a little thicker, and then they get really thin at the top. So we kind of just keep that in the back of our minds of the basic anatomy of trees here, that it follows a typical pattern. So, and then what I'll do now is I'll get my needlepoint brush, and we'll get some of the same paint, load up the brush like that, and then we have a very thin brush to work with, and we can get some more of those finer branches. And I just kind of go quickly with these. These branches go on fast, like this, like that. And they're thinner too, so they look really good. So you're actually going from thick to thin. Thicker, you know, in the bottom of the tree trunk, thick. And then we just take these and we start just getting them on like so. You can get a few here and there, like this. Not too big of a deal. Get some interesting limbs and things going here. And it just really brings a good quality of realism to it. And I think that's fine. All right, so that's good. Maybe a few more here, I think, over this way. Yeah, that's going to be good over here because there is some of the foliage over here is like that. Okay, now we could take our, well, I think I'll use my smaller brush or my mid-size brush, the number 8, just to mix up a little more paint over here. Some green and some brown. Green, brown, raw umber, maybe a little bit of the cerulean blue as well. A little more of the brown there, maybe a little bit of the blue too. Like that, some French ultramarine blue, just to get a little bit of that darker dark there. I just want to get a little bit of some darker foliage on the trees. So what I'll do is, I sometimes like to use a fan brush. This is an old fan brush I have. I don't know where. I think it was either maybe one of my mom or my father's from many, many years ago. Winton, which is a Winsor & Newton, England, number 8 fan brush. I think it was maybe used for oil painting. But maybe someone out there knows this brush, and if it's been around a long time, but I can remember this since probably the 1970s, I think, is when I first saw it in the house, I think, around. And then I'll try to take this brush, load it up with some paint, and then just see if I can get a bit of some darks here. Just a few indications of some foliage. You know, I'm going to try to feel it out as I go. Get some more of that paint on there. Trying to just kind of flick it onto the paper. Kind of scrub it on there a little bit. Yeah, that works good. Tap a few bits on there and then kind of scrub it upwards. That looks pretty good. Do the same. So I'm just trying to get a little more coverage on the foliage here. So give it a little more volume so it's a little thicker. And that looks pretty good like that. A couple taps here and there though. I wouldn't go too much. You know, try to get a little bit of the... This looks really good. I've seen some really awesome paintings too where they kind of use a lot of this like really fine, light application of paint. Gives it a real nice feeling of like air and three-dimensional quality. Alright, so that's pretty good. I could go in with a little more green just to maybe make it a little more and I'm going to have to soften that green out a little bit, but let me get some of it on there like that, and then rinse off my brush really good, dry the paint, the water off on my brush like this, and then go back in and grab a little more of this again just to soften up that green a little bit. But you can play around, have fun with your watercolors, try different things. Don't be afraid to experiment. I'll try to get a little more bits of some foliage down here at the bottom of the trees. They were kind of looking like they needed some foliage at the bottom of the trees areas, I think. So that works out good. I step back and kind of look at my painting. I step back about 3-4 feet or so, or 5 feet, and look. That sometimes helps, stepping back a little bit. Okay, now I will pick up some more of the burnt umber, raw sienna, green, blue, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of the blue, cerulean blue, purple. We'll mix that down here. So we're going to have a mixture of all these colors. See if we can start getting in some darker darks. I rinse off my brush if it's a little too dark. Not a problem. Dry off some of the all right, and then I'm going to try to mix up my colors a little bit. Again, I'm going to try to modulate my colors as I do some of these trees and bushes and things, and the more of the foreground here. I'd like to leave that lighter there, so I remove some of the paint I just put on, and we'll just keep going here. Make some darker trees here, like that. Maybe another up here like this. There's another tree here, maybe a little more green and blue. Okay, darker down at the bottom here. All right, so we are really enjoying getting some of these darks in. And that's really good. It pushes back those purple mountains. So if I can get some of these darks in here. Like that. And it's still good. We don't lose. We've painted a really dark for the tree trunks. We painted it really dark. So now when we go over with this similar tonal value on top of those tree trunks, they still remain there, which looks really good. So we kind of like this. All right, I think we're almost completed. Let's do one more thing. Let's get a little bit of reflections in the water from some of these trees and things up here. Again, I'm just doing a couple more darks here. All right, that looks good. So now, one more break. We'll come back. We'll add some beautiful reflections in the water to give that unmistakable look of water with some reflections in it to give it that nice feel of water. All right, we are back, and we are going to get those reflections in the water to complete the painting. So one more time, I will empty my water bucket, get some fresh, clean water, and what else are we going to do here? We'll pick up some cerulean blue. And then we have some of our other sienna and burnt umbers and some other French ultramarine blue. We have a lot of good colors on the palette. We can just use that and we'll be really lucky. Okay, so we'll take some of that. And we're just going to do this. So what I do is try to, you can even pre-wet the paper a little bit. So I'll pre-wet the paper over here like this with fresh clean water. We'll try that and see how that works. Maybe we'll add some of that blue, some a little bit of the browns, sienna, umbers. I do a couple nail scratches there just to kind of get some lines and make it seem like it's maybe some lines going this way too. That tends to look really good if you can do your vertical lines first with your water, and then you go over it with the horizontal lines like this, but not too many, just enough that you can kind of get it to look like it's got a reflection to it. I'll blend this over here on this side a little bit, just to sort of, I don't want too much attention over here, so I'll blot that up a little bit. So I just soften it up and then blot it with a, like that. This over here looks okay. I'll leave that like it is. And then over here, I think that's fine. You can always add a little tiny bit of really cool, interesting color once you're done. Maybe like that. So some cadmium lemon yellow right in the middle there. And then what I would do is take that cadmium lemon yellow, and I would add it in a few spots around, but very, very lightly. So I rinse off my brush, add in to the brush a little bit of that cadmium lemon yellow. Just in a few other places, kind of like this, just in a few other spots. And then even in the sky, I might add a little bit of that cadmium lemon yellow. Just a little, tiny bit of it. As long as I'm using fresh, crystal clear water, I can put a little bit of that cadmium lemon yellow in a few strategic spots here and there in the painting, just so that I have it in other places and it doesn't look like it's the only spot in the painting. We do have it, but if we add a little bit there, that looks pretty good. And then of course we have it I rinse off my brush with fresh clean water and just have a little bit there. And this just kind of maybe makes it feel a little more sunny looking, like a little bit warmer, the painting. And I'll try to blend this out a little bit too. And if you want to kind of tone it down a little bit, you just pick up some of the other colors that we've used. I'm laughing because this is just like a lot of fun, and I definitely am doing things differently than I normally do, which is great. So I hope you will have fun, most of all with your watercolors. Have a fun time with your watercolors. Don't let them be boring or get the best of you or become something that you're not interested in picking up your brushes or something like that. Grab your brushes, grab your pencils, your paper, try some new things. Try some of these new things we've done today with maybe the fan brush. Maybe you have a fan brush around somewhere, something like this. You try that out. Maybe we're going to try more of a, here we added more water to our painting. We went through the whole process of tons of water. First wash, glazing, lots of water. Get our whole wash in there for our sky and our foreground for the water here. Then we, again, went over the second time with another fresh, crystal clear coating of water, and then we started going in and getting our trees in and things like that to give it that really soft look. And I can guarantee you're going to have a fun time and enjoy this painting as you work through the different progressions of it and see that it's really fun to work with a lot of water, light washes, and then at the end we did build up some darker tones on the painting, but you can leave it lighter if you want and not go with those darker tones like I did. It would look just as good if we just left it with the lighter washes without some of the darker, but I'm so used to painting with rich dark paint all the time that it's really difficult for me just to leave a painting without putting in some really good strong darks. I mean, that's just like my kind of like way I've been always painting my entire time in watercolor, so that's why. But again, have fun, do some experimentation, have a great time with it, and we're going to see before you know it, I'm back again painting more watercolors, all right? Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, and we'll see you soon.